Um, Welcome back. We are so glad you are here with us for today's deep dive. When you picture someone trying to solve a major problem, there is usually um, this assumption that the solution has to be as massive as the problem itself.
Right, yeah. We always look for the big fix.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I want you, the learner, sitting there listening to this, to imagine you have this large wooden bucket, and your goal, well, your entire livelihood really depends on keeping that bucket filled with water.
Okay, I am picturing it.
But the water level just isn't rising. In fact, week by week, it seems to be dropping. So what do most of us do? We spend our entire lives frantically searching for a bigger hose.
100%.
We think if I just had a higher pressure hose or a wider nozzle, if I could just pump a massive volume of water into the top of this bucket, I would finally be okay.
Right, like getting a raise or a promotion.
Yes, exactly. We ask for a raise, we look for a new job, we try to work 80 hours a week, we obsess over the flow of water coming in. All the while, we are completely ignoring the fact that the bottom of the bucket looks like a colander.
Yeah, that is such a great analogy.
There are dozens of tiny, almost invisible holes drilled into the wood, and the water is just quietly, continuously streaming out into the dirt.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I feel like this is where so many people are stuck.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is an incredibly common human blind spot, especially, particularly when it comes to personal finance. We are culturally conditioned to be hyper-focused on the inflow.
Right, the top line revenue.
Exactly. We look at the generation of resources, and we remain almost willfully ignorant of the leakage at the bottom. We equate financial success entirely with earning power.
Which makes sense. I mean, that is what society tells us to do.
It does, but true wealth building fundamentally relies on retention. If you have a systemic leakage problem, turning up the pressure on the hose doesn't actually solve the underlying structural issue.
Oh, wow. It just means you lose water faster.
Precisely. It just means you are bleeding money at a faster, more aggressive rate. The more you make, the more you bleed. That is so true. So today we are deconstructing exactly how to spot those microscopic leaks. And we are using a really fascinating confessional masterclass from YouTube creator Alicia Invests.
Yeah, this video is fantastic.
The video is titled 20 Frugal Habits That Saved Me Thousands. And our mission today is to deconstruct these habits. But, and I want to be really clear here, we are not doing this to guilt trip you about buying a latte on a Tuesday morning
No, definitely not.
or telling you that you must live this life of bleak deprivation. This isn't a lecture. Think of this deep dive as an exploration of systemic lifestyle design.
I love that phrasing, systemic lifestyle design.
Right. We want to help you spot the tiny, hidden places where your money escapes, often without your explicit permission.
And what makes this particular source material so compelling is the sheer transparency. The creator details the exact granular strategies they use to stop bleeding money.
They really show the receipts, literally.
They do. They show the math of how those small behavioral changes compounded over time. But crucially, they also reveal where they push things way too far.
Yeah, the dark side of it all.
Exactly. They explore the psychological toll of extreme frugality. It is a very honest, unvarnished look at the mechanics of personal finance. They strip away all that theoretical advice.
So before we can plug the holes in the bucket, we have to actually see them.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the first diagnostic tool the creator talks about, tracking every single dollar.
Yes, the foundational step.
Now, I think a lot of people assume they know roughly where their money goes. You pay your rent, your car note, you buy groceries. You keep this sort of mental tally.
Right, but that mental tally is a fiction.
It totally is.
Accurate.
The creator emphasizes that almost nobody actually knows the reality of their cash flow until they write it down. It reminds me of the Hawthorne effect in psychology.
Oh, absolutely. The Hawthorne effect is the perfect lens for this.
Just the idea that the simple act of observing a behavior fundamentally changes that behavior.
That mental tally we keep is essentially a story we write for ourselves to avoid discomfort. The human brain is just incredibly skilled at rationalizing purchases in the immediate moment.
Oh, for sure. I
But-
deserve this treat.
Exactly. And then we conveniently, almost instantly forget them. A $15 subscription here, a $40 convenience store run there. But when you actually sit down and track every dollar manually in a spreadsheet,
Manually being the key word there.
yes, not just an automated app, you are holding up a harsh mirror to your actual behavior, not your aspirational behavior.
Right, because if an app just quietly categorizes your spending into a pie chart, there's zero friction. But the spreadsheet acts as this impartial judge. You have to physically type the numbers in.
It forces confrontation.
It does. And the creator talks about how this uncovers forgotten subscriptions, but more importantly, hidden behavioral patterns. Like realizing your grocery spending spikes by 50% if you shop when you are hungry or stressed.
Or noticing that specific emotional triggers reliably lead to certain impulse buys. When you are forced to look at a spreadsheet and see, in stark black and white, that you spent $400 in a single month on food delivery.
Which is so easy to do with all the fees on those apps.
It really is. But that number creates its own internal pressure toward change. Cognitive dissonance kicks in. You view yourself as a responsible person, but the data clearly shows irresponsible behavior.
You literally can't hide from it anymore.
Exactly. The aggregate number removes the plausible deniability.
I can completely see how seeing a $400 takeout bill would be a shock to the system. You are looking at a car payment disguised as lukewarm pad thai.
That is a great way to put it.
And related to that tracking, the creator became absolutely obsessive about eliminating fees. Bank fees, late fees, ATM fees. I feel like most of us just accept these as the inevitable friction of modern life.
We do, but we shouldn't. The source points out that Americans pay an average of over $300 annually just in bank fees alone.
$300 just to let the bank hold your money.
It is entirely by design. The banking industry heavily relies on the architecture of what we could call small enough not to complain fees.
Right, like if they just billed you $300 on January 1st, there'd be riots.
Exactly. You would immediately close the account. But taking $25 for dropping below a minimum balance or $3 for an out-of-network ATM, it flies completely under the radar.
It is a slow bleed.
A very methodical bleed. So the creator's approach was to refuse participation in that sister entirely. They switched to no-fee, online-only accounts.
And they set up autopay on absolutely everything, right?
Yes, to ensure late fees were mathematically impossible.
Okay, let's talk about the mechanics of that automation. Because we track the money, we kill the parasitic fees. But what about the money we actually want to keep? The creator talks about automating savings the exact same day the paycheck arrives.
Yes, moving it immediately, especially into high-yield savings or investments.
Right. Getting that 4 to 5% APY we're seeing in 2026 before you even have time to blink.
This is perhaps the most profound behavioral intervention you can make in your financial life. The standard approach most people take is highly flawed. They get paid, pay their bills, go out with friends, and then try to save whatever is left.
But there is never anything left.
Exactly. Parkinson's law dictates that work expands to fill the time allotted. The financial equivalent is that spending expands to consume the available income.
Oh, that is so true. The bucket is always mysteriously empty by the 28th of the month.
If the money is sitting in your checking account, there is always going to be an unexpected expense or a purchase that feels justified.
So the intention to save is just defeated by daily friction.
By automating the transfer of funds on the very same day you are paid, you completely remove willpower from the equation. The system handles it before your conscious mind even registers the money is there.
It just disappears.
Yes. And what happens next is fascinating. Your spending naturally adapts to what is left. It is a form of forced scarcity, but designed entirely in service of your future.
But I have to push back here on the reality of this. Isn't tracking every single dollar manually and micromanaging all these automated transfers just incredibly exhausting?
It can be, yes.
I mean, does the spreadsheet become its own full-time job?
Mm-hmm.
If I have to log every pack of gum, I feel like I would give up after a week.
That is a very valid concern. But the source material clarifies this nuance. The creator tracked everything consistently, but not necessarily obsessively forever.
Oh, okay, so it's not a lifetime sentence.
No, not at all. They noted that doing it meticulously for even just one single month acts as a radical diagnostic tool. You don't have to track every pack of gum for the rest of your life.
It's like a 30-day financial MRI.
Exactly. It establishes a factual baseline of reality. Once you know your patterns, the automation handles the heavy lifting, and the tracking is just for occasional maintenance.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. But once the system pulls the savings out, your brain still craves that dopamine hit of spending the money you do have left. How do we fix that?
That leads perfectly into how they handled habitual consumption.
Right, the daily leaks.
Yeah.
The creator implemented something called the 30-day rule for non-essentials. If they wanted something small, they forced themselves to wait 7 days. Moderate purchases were 30 days, and big stuff was 90 days.
What's fascinating here is the underlying psychology. The waiting period is incredibly effective because it weaponizes time against marketers.
Oh, I love that phrase, weaponizing time.
Think about the modern retail ecosystem. It is entirely engineered to create a sense of manufactured urgency. Flash sales, limited stock warnings, and bright red
And
text.
click checkout buttons.
Yes. They are all designed to collapse the space between the initial impulse and the final transaction. They want you operating in a state of heightened emotional arousal, bypassing your prefrontal cortex.
They want you to buy it before your logical brain can say, wait, do I actually need a fourth pair of running shoes?
Precisely. The 30-day rule forcefully inserts space back into that process. And what the creator observed is that during that mandatory waiting period, most desires simply evaporate.
The urge just dies.
The item that felt absolutely urgent on a Tuesday afternoon gradually loses its psychological grip. By the time 30 days have passed, you often can't even remember why you wanted it in the first place.
It acts as a flawless filter.
Exactly. It exposes which desires are rooted in actual need and which are just momentary emotional impulses triggered by an ad.
It is literally a mandatory cooling off period for your wallet.
Yeah.
And they took this even further with no spend challenges, right?
Yeah.
Doing days or weeks or a full month of buying absolutely nothing but bare bones essentials.
Yes. Just rent, utilities, and basic groceries.
No restaurants, no Amazon orders at midnight. The creator said this brutal constraint revealed how much spending was just sheer boredom or trying to solve an emotional problem with retail therapy.
A no-spend challenge functions as a hard reset for your dopamine receptors. When spending becomes a pacifier for stress or boredom, taking it away forces you to confront those underlying emotions.
You realize a new kitchen gadget doesn't cure your burnout from work.
Exactly. After no spend month, the automatic impulse to reach for your credit card has been interrupted.
And one of the biggest pacifiers, the one that drains so much without us noticing, is what the creator calls liquid spending.
Oh, the liquid spending is huge.
Cutting out bottled water, the daily coffee shop runs, sodas. They stopped paying for commercial drinks almost entirely. Carried a reusable water bottle everywhere. Now, I know the skip the daily latte advice is the oldest cliche in personal finance, but Alicia actually maps out the true opportunity cost, doesn't she?
Yes, and the math behind that cliche is violent when you break it down. It is a cliche for a reason. The profit margins on liquid consumption are astronomical.
Because a $5 coffee is just pennies worth of beans and milk.
Right, you are paying a massive premium for the convenience and the aesthetic experience. The creator isn't saying coffee is evil. What they are highlighting is the profound weight of opportunity cost.
Because it is not just the $1,800 a year in absolute terms. Break down what happens to that money if you don't hand it to a barista.
If you take that same $1,800 annually and instead of consuming it, you direct it into a broad market index fund, the entire trajectory changes.
Assuming average market returns over time.
Yes, historically around 7 to 10% annually before inflation. If you invest that $1,800 every year for 30 years, that daily habit transforms into a portfolio worth roughly $40,000.
$40,000.
When you make that daily purchase, you are actively trading away $40,000 of your future net worth.
You are robbing your future self. It really makes that paper cup of coffee taste a lot more expensive when you realize you are drinking your own retirement.
That framing completely alters the cognitive weight of the decision. In isolation, a $5 transaction feels meaningless. But aggregated, it represents a massive structural leak.
Okay, so plugging those isolated leaks is one thing. That is just a negotiation with yourself. You can choose to make your own coffee. But eventually, this collides with the hardest variable in personal finance, other people.
Yes, the social friction.
Changing your habits means fundamentally changing how you interact with your social circle. The creator talked about stopping restaurant meals. For 3 years, they and their wife ate out only 2 to 3 times per year.
That is an extreme behavioral shift, completely misaligned with modern cultural norms.
But the financial logic is undeniable, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The source notes the average American household spends over $3,600 annually on food away from home. By redirecting all of that into investments, this single habit contributed over $10,000 to their net worth over just 3 years.
10 grand, purely by eating at your own dining room table. But they were honest about the friction this caused. Turning down dinner invites, being the weird friends who say no to going out for drinks.
But they realized their true relationships survived. The friends who were genuinely invested were happy to come over for a home-cooked dinner or meet for a walk.
But the relationships that strictly required an expensive restaurant to maintain, those probably weren't that deep to begin with.
In modern society, we often use spending as a proxy for connection. We substitute a $100 dinner bill for genuine intimacy or depth conversation.
It's just easier to pay for an experience than to actually cultivate a relationship.
Yes. When you remove the financial transaction from your social life, it acts as a very intense filter. The friction is real, but it forces you to build connections based on shared time and values.
And if saying no to dinner creates friction, their next policy must have started absolute fires in their family group chats. The no gift policy.
Oh, yes, the wealth transfer.
Yeah, they ended the exchange of gifts with adult family and friends entirely. They literally called it a wealth transfer to retailers disguised as affection.
Hmm.
That's a brutal way to phrase it, but it hits so hard.
It is a brilliant, albeit abrasive way to describe the modern holiday industrial complex. If we look at this through the lens of economics, there is a concept called dead weight loss in gift giving.
Okay, tell me more about dead weight loss.
It dictates that the monetary value of a gift to the recipient is almost always less than the cost paid by the giver. You spend $50 on a sweater for your brother that he will rarely wear.
Right, and he spends 50 bucks on a kitchen gadget for you that sits in a drawer.
You have both burned $50 of capital, neither has gained $50 of utility, and the only true winner is the retailer who captured the margins.
So what does this all mean for actually executing it? How do you look your family in the eye and say, I am not buying you Christmas presents without sounding like Scrooge? People would be so offended.
The source material is very forthright about that consequence. The creator admits it was highly socially awkward at first. People were surprised, some were mildly offended.
Because it goes against the social script.
Exactly. But the nuance in how they handled it is crucial. They didn't cancel the celebrations. They communicated proactively, well in advance, saying, let's share a meal or plan an experience instead.
They shifted the currency from retail goods to shared time.
Yes. And importantly, they still bought gifts for children, where the magic of a tangible gift genuinely matters. But for adults, ending that forced obligation reduced financial stress, eliminated clutter, and improved the actual quality of celebrations.
It really proves connection doesn't require a barcode. Okay, so you have stepped back from the social consumption treadmill. Now you have to rebuild your actual material life. This brings us to a major reframing of value starting in the kitchen.
Aggressive meal planning.
Right. Since they weren't going to restaurants, they instituted rigid Sunday bulk cooking, planning the week's meals, buying precise ingredients, and cooking massive batches of staples like rice, beans, chicken, potatoes.
And this was a multi-pronged attack on financial leaks. First, it killed impulse grocery buying.
Because you aren't wandering down the snack aisle hungry.
Exactly. Second, it dropped their food waste to near zero. The source mentions the average American household throws away over $1,000 of food annually.
Think about the mechanics of that waste. You go to work, earn wages, pay taxes on those wages, buy perishable food, pay utilities to power the fridge, and then a week later, throw it in a landfill.
It is the most literal interpretation of a leaky bucket imaginable.
Aggressive meal planning eliminates that $1,000 leak entirely. Plus, it destroys the temptation of expensive food delivery. When you come home exhausted and dinner is already in the fridge, ordering takeout suddenly feels like more work.
The path of least resistance has been engineered to be the financially responsible choice.
Making the right thing the easy thing. But this radical reframing of value didn't stop at food. The creator applied a ruthless mathematical lens to everything they bought. The cost per use formula.
This is a fundamental shift in consumer psychology.
Yeah, think of your purchases like hiring an employee. A $20 shirt that shrinks after 2 washes is a temp worker with an exorbitant hourly rate. A $50 shirt that lasts years is a loyal employee.
The traditional question a consumer asks is this cheap right now? The cost per use model changes it to, how much will each use of this item cost over its lifespan?
So a $50 shirt worn 50 times is $1 per use.
Right. But a $20 clearance rack shirt that fits poorly and you only wear twice costs $10 per use. The cheap shirt is practically 10 times more expensive.
It gives you the psychological permission to spend more upfront on quality items, knowing the math works out in the long run. Here's where it gets really interesting, though, how they applied this to technology.
Yes, the tech upgrade cycle.
We live in a society obsessed with the newest phone. But the creators stepped off the treadmill entirely. They bought $100 refurbished Google Pixel phones on Amazon instead of dropping $1,000 on a new iPhone every 2 years.
Technology constantly masquerades as an absolute necessity. The marketing pushes the narrative that you must have the newest processor or camera just to participate in modern life.
But practically, they were just texting and listening to podcasts.
Exactly. They realized a refurbished phone, a few generations old, did 98% of what a flagship phone did. By accepting marginal downgrades, they saved $800 to $1,000 per cycle.
But the social consequence is fascinating. The creator explicitly mentions embracing green text bubbles.
It is a profound example of rejecting manufactured social pressure.
We have literally tied our societal status to the color of a text bubble. Apple engineered this pressure, where a green bubble signals you are outside the ecosystem, or maybe you can't afford the good phone.
They completely decoupled their self-worth from a piece of consumer electronics.
They basically said, I'll take the green bubble and I'll keep the $1,000 in my investment account, thanks.
And importantly, the source notes they did eventually upgrade, but only when the camera quality became a direct income-generating tool for their YouTube channel.
It shifted from a status symbol to a capital investment. And for physical things they needed but didn't want to buy, they leaned into buy-nothing groups and the sharing economy.
Borrowing an extension ladder or a specialized drill bit instead of buying.
Right. You need a travel stroller for one weekend. Just ask the neighborhood group. Someone has one gathering dust.
For items with an incredibly low frequency of use, owning them individually makes zero financial sense. You eliminate the transaction cost entirely.
Okay, so by mastering value on this micro scale, you build the psychological muscle for the final boss of personal finance, the structural behemoths, the massive holes at the bottom of the bucket, housing and transportation.
Yes, the biggest expenses.
The creator took on cars first, making the radical move to a one-car household and relying exclusively on cash cars.
Transportation is often the silent killer of wealth accumulation. Even a fully paid-off vehicle costs thousands annually in insurance, registration, maintenance, and depreciation.
The creator realized their second car was being driven maybe twice a week.
When you divide the total annual holding cost by those few trips, the math is horrifying. Each trip to the grocery store becomes absurdly expensive, so they sold the second car, saving thousands annually.
And for the one car they kept, no loans. They paid cash for a $5,000 Civic. The average new car payment in 2026 is over $770 a month. That is $9,000 a year in debt payments for an asset losing value every day.
This is where the compound math is staggering. If you redirect that $9,000 annual payment into investments over 10 years, you are looking at accumulating roughly $150,000 in wealth.
$150,000. That is the true opportunity cost of a new car.
Exactly. But you mentioned the one-car household.
All right, I have to push back hard on that. What about the sheer inconvenience? If you both work or live in the suburbs, coordinating commutes and emergencies sounds like a daily stress nightmare that negates the savings.
The source material doesn't sugarcoat the friction. The creator admits it was highly inconvenient at times. It required intense calendar coordination.
I bet.
However, the decision was driven strictly by data. The cost of that occasional inconvenience, maybe taking an Uber once a month, was mathematically far lower than the thousands burned on a vehicle functioning mostly as a driveway ornament.
It is a brutal prioritization of financial velocity over on-demand convenience. And speaking of negotiating bills, they spent 1 hour annually treating fixed utilities like internet and insurance as suggestions, threatening to switch providers to save hundreds.
A phenomenal hourly rate for an awkward phone call.
Absolutely. But the crown jewel of their structural overhaul was housing. They utilized a strategy called house hacking.
Housing typically consumes 30 to 40% of a person's income. The creator completely inverted this paradigm.
Let's break down the mechanics. How do you buy a 3-unit building if you don't have massive capital?
They utilized an FHA loan insured by the Federal Housing Administration. It is designed to lower the barrier to homeownership. Instead of a 20% down payment, an FHA loan requires just 3.5%.
Oh, wow. Because they lived in one of the units, it counted as a primary residence.
Yes. They moved into one unit and rented out the other two. The rental income entirely covered the mortgage, property taxes, and insurance.
So their personal housing cost dropped to zero. But wait, what about private mortgage insurance? PMI. Because they put so little down.
Exactly. The lender views you as high risk, so you pay PMI. But the beauty of the house hack is the rental income covered the mortgage and the PMI. And they didn't stop there.
They added a bathroom to their own unit and rented out spare bedrooms on Airbnb.
Generating an additional $2,000 of pure monthly profit, their house was paying them a salary just to live there.
But we have to address the reality of this. The internet loves to sell this as passive income. What is it actually like to live on the other side of a wall from your tenants?
It is vital to acknowledge the gritty reality. It is in no way passive. You are taking on a highly active, stressful second job as a live-in landlord, dealing with plumbing emergencies at 2 in the morning, sharing roles with tenants.
Managing Airbnb turnovers.
Yes, the financial rewards are massive, but you are paying for that velocity with your time, privacy, and peace of mind.
And they kept costs low with intense DIY, learning plumbing and electrical from YouTube to avoid a $150 an hour plumber. They also bought dented and dinged appliances for half off.
The psychological barrier to DIY is fascinating. Most people outsource it, but every skill you acquire is a labor expense you never pay again. And buying scratched appliances for rental units is brilliant. You get full functional utility without paying a premium for pristine cosmetics that will inevitably get worn anyway.
So you pull all these levers, and the water level in the bucket explodes upward. But that introduces a paradox. More money creates new problems. How did they handle success, and what was the dark side of this extreme frugality?
The most critical discipline they maintained as their income grew from side hustles and YouTube was the absolute avoidance of lifestyle inflation.
Right. When income rises, the cultural script is to immediately upgrade your lifestyle to match it.
Yes, but their baseline living expenses remained flat. Every additional dollar earned was directed immediately into investments. This conscious uncoupling of income from expenditure is the secret engine of wealth building.
It is like a treadmill. You keep turning up the speed by making more money, but if you upgrade your apartment and car, you are still sweating just as hard, stuck in the exact same place financially.
Exactly. The margin never widens.
And they built that income through side hustle stacking, working nights, giving up TV, increasing the surface area for luck. But this intense grind led to what they call a frugality hangover.
This is where the source is deeply cautionary. The creator openly lists their profound regrets.
Yeah, they mentioned eating cheap, bulk-cooked chicken every single day permanently ruined their enjoyment of a food they used to love.
They had an ultra-minimal wedding to save money, but now deeply regret not having professional photos or a larger celebration to commemorate that milestone.
Missing out on specific social experiences with friends. Which raises an important question. What is the ultimate point of all this? If you save all this money but ruin your wedding memories and can't stomach chicken, did you actually win?
That is the crux of this entire deep dive. Frugality is a tool, not a virtue. The goal of personal finance is not to die with a high score in your bank account. The goal is to purchase freedom, security, and options for your time.
When frugality costs you things that genuinely matter, it defeats its own purpose.
The creator discovered the 80-20 rule of frugality the hard way. The first 20% of effort automating savings, avoiding lifestyle inflation produces 80% of the results.
Pushing into the extremes just consumes willpower and joy for marginal saving.
Exactly. It is about finding the sustainable version of these habits.
So we've explored the Hawthorne effect of tracking money, the architecture of bank fees, automating savings, the 30-day rule, the $40,000 coffee opportunity cost, house hacking, and cost per use.
But the most dangerous thing you can do right now is passively consume this, nod along, and change absolutely nothing.
Right, so here's our challenge to you. Don't overhaul your entire life tomorrow. You will burn out. Pick exactly 3 habits we discussed today. Maybe it is the 30-day rule, setting up automatic savings, and spending 1 hour negotiating your internet bill. Implement those 3 things this week. Track them for just 1 month.
Watch how quickly those small systemic changes compound and raise the water level in your bucket. You possess the agency to stop the drain.
We've spent this entire time talking about the mechanics of plugging leaks in your financial bucket. But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. I want you to think about your time bucket. We all get the exact same 24 hours streaming in. If we took these exact same frugal habits, the 30-day waiting period before a new commitment, tracking every single minute in a spreadsheet to see where your hours escape, cutting out junk media consumption and applied them to how you spend your time instead of your money, what kind of wealth would you discover there?